intelligent, critiquing, judgmental, sometimes investors, because everyone in India is judgmental. We all are. We all judge everyone very, very closely and all the time. How do you, without those biases and without those constraints, give opportunity to everyone to be able to tell their stories? Anyone who's starting up, as long as it's legit, as long as it's, there is a product, there is a story, and there is a vision, let's give them a platform. And that's what we try to do, and that's what we've been doing. It's hard, because somewhere, if you understand, people love sensational, negative stories. Those stories are remembered also very, very clearly. But how do you then make boring, mundane, positive, genuine stories stay? And that's what we've been doing. So
and sadly, those stories do... They're the most interesting, aren't they, when it's very dramatic? But also the inspirational stories are also very, very popular as well. We do have 5 minutes. I would love to throw out to our audience. Let's get some good audience questions going. Please do raise your hand. Tell us who you are and where you're from. And we'll get a microphone to you. Do we have any further questions for our lovely panelists on branding, going global, storytelling? Do we need any more advice from our panelists here? Any further questions? Do we have any entrepreneurs in the audience? Please raise your hand. Do we have any entrepreneurs today in our audience? Oh, no, we don't. That's interesting. Oh, yes, we do here. Excellent. Yes. Anyone that wants to start a business in our audience as well? Is there anyone here that's looking to potentially go it alone in the near future? No? Oh, yes, we've got a couple in the audience, yes. Well, let's get a microphone to them. There must be one question in terms of what you want to do to potentially build your brand, not now, but maybe in the future. But if you have something in mind, you must have something in mind. So this is your perfect, what advice would you ask for from our lovely panelists in terms of the brand and how to tell your story? On the spot, there you go.
So my question is to Shraddha.
Yes, Mr. Nikhil.
What do you like about being in business in Bangalore, and what would you like to change?
What I like about being in business in Bangalore, I think, and I always say this, is that this is the best city to stay in India if you want to do anything and do a business. I can't think of any other city, sorry, but I can't think of staying in Delhi or anywhere else. And Bombay is too expensive, so it's most affordable, most warm, you have the best talent and most friendly and amazing people. So you can't get a better city, and I would rate it as one of the best in the world, except for the traffic. What would I like to change about the city is traffic. And again, it's back, and it's so sad after 2 years, it's again back to madness.
Good stuff. Yes, we have a gentleman at the front here.
I'm just curious, why do we not have a global Indian brand as of today? Like, what are the challenges that stops India from, having a global brand or a global household brand, like a Coke or a Nike or like something like that?
I think he's the best person to answer, but I've always thought about this because we all travel across the world, and whenever you're going to the fancy store, you think that why can't Indian brands be there? And and people ask you, you're sitting in a New York cafe, which Indian brands, and suddenly you're thinking, which one should you talk about? Having said that, I think it's very unfair to us as Indians to say that we've not had brands, because if you see, the Queen and the Princess are also using the Indian brands only, and the diamond. Sorry to say this, but I want to call out, it is the Indian jewel, which is the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess and all the jewels. But having said that, we are, when it comes to building brands, one is that we have a huge market in-house, so we never thought of going global. Look at Fab India and all these. These are fantastic brands, and if you ask William Bissell, then he'll say, now he's thinking about going outside, because we have such a huge market inside. And the second thing would be, is that our packaging, our design, and and thinking about external markets, I think we didn't think, but now with the digital infrastructure, you will see fantastic brands. And one brand I want to call out now that you're in Bengaluru is the Araku coffee, right? I was very surprised that it's one of the most fancy coffees sold in France and in UK and in US, and it's an Indian coffee based here in Bengaluru. You know, of course, you can mention a lot of Indian brands, but yeah, now is the time we'll see a lot of Indian brands. Yes, you have to. Now that you're here, you have to.
Do you want to build on that?
No, you're absolutely right. I think India itself has been such a complex and a big market, right? I mean, if you put all the states in India together, it's what multiple of Europe it is, right? Yeah. So you look at India with all the 27 states, it's larger than Europe. The complexities are much more than Europe. So I think there are so much problems to solve. It just takes time to, think about any other market in that sense. And that's really been the truth. I think the growth rate, the macroeconomic growth rate in India has been massive. So there's just so many opportunities. So you will have to pick your battles in terms of what you want to do. And I would believe that's the right thing Indian companies have done, and they've matured. But at the same time, when you look at the services, so India has produced the biggest brands of personality, from Satya Nadella to Sundar Pichai. I mean, they're brands of India, to be honest. If you look at Freshworks in the SaaS spaces, they are the brands of India, the ChargeBees on the world. So on services segment, we've already done that. I think it's just that the product segment is catching up, and you will see that impact for the next decade, I would say.
Thanks so much. I think we've got time for just one last question. Yeah, there was a gentleman that had his hand up a couple of times there. So yes, please do go ahead and tell us what your question is, who you are and where you're from, please.
I already had the mic, so...
Oh, you did? Sorry, yes. Okay, we'll try and jump to both of you then. So I did say this gentleman could go, but yes, please do very quickly.
Shraddha,
go ahead.
My name is Ravi. The question is for Shraddha. Sorry, sir, because it's International Women's Day. So my question, Shraddha, is that I've seen you grow from startup to what you are today. Let's say someone is interested in learning this culture, or being in that environment or network. Do you in your company have a setup where we can learn the from scratch on how to innovate the product, what it is, what it takes to be a startup? Are there founders there where we can meet, or stuff like that that's happening? It will be helpful.
Actually a lot, because the reality is that every day there are so many companies getting registered, and we don't want to. They are our main constituents, and we exist because of them. Because when you become unicorn, then you don't care, right? Like then everyone from the world is giving you the attention. So we love the entrepreneurs who are starting and who are in the early stage, and we have a lot of programs. We'll tell you, we do a lot of engagements, meetups, learnings. So yes, we'll discuss that. Yes.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, continue the discussion after, for sure. And final question, very quickly. Where is he? There he is. Please tell us who you are and where you're from, please.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm Arjun. I'm a grad student at Peking University in China. So my question is also about global brands. So what makes an Indian brand appealing abroad? Is it some sort of Indian characteristic, or something that's culturally Indian, or some sort of marketing? Or is it almost India agnostic, and all that matters is execution and just the fundamentals of the product itself?
I think there are a couple of things. You'll have to choose it carefully. There are natural products which, with an Indian brand or an Eastern brand, are very well accepted. Not just accepted, they're premium, right? When you look at something like a home decor, a copper, or ethnic, it's naturally coming from East, will be very well accepted and appreciated. When you look at spices, teas, those are the things. So I think there are certain product categories you will find which have a very, very natural acceptance in the international markets. And then India, again, has a huge strength in the formulations and in product development. I think that's another one where you actually choose a product which is international first. And when I say international, you'll have to choose your market. US is very different than Europe. I just learned, for example, you could sell a bamboo pillow in the US, but in Germany, nobody would know a bamboo pillow, right? I mean, it's that different. So you'll need to know the market, and then utilize the power of India with respect to the manufacturing, the R&D, and develop, and make that a market first, the international market first product, right? So you'll have to identify according to your product and segment, and saying what do you want to market, what is the product market fit, and accordingly leverage the advantages of India.
Sadly, that is all we have time for. Shraddha, Nitin, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your advice and thoughts so openly with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Nitin and Shraddha there. Thank you. And please do not go away. We will be back soon with Edie Lush. She's coming back on the stage, and she's going to be interviewing the co-founder of Zeroda and True Beacon. So that's in just a few moments. Thank you.
So I'm really excited now to bring you another chapter in our Global Disruptor series. And without any further ado, let's get on to stage the person you've all been waiting for. Come on down, the co-founder of True Beacon and Zeroda, Nikhil Kamath. Thanks very much for coming along.
Huh? नहीं बस हो गया.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Nice to see you. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Happy International Women's Day.
To you.
So I want to get straight into it. Let's go back to your origin story, first of all. You started trading equities at the age of 17, and you were looking specifically at emerging derivatives and commodities. First of all, what drew you to that? Why did you want to trade stocks?
Well, for the lack of a better word, to earn a wage, you have to do something. And I had people, both in my family and outside, who had some kind of exposure to equity trading. Mm-hmm. And I think, you pick up from them, and then you learn from trying, failing sometimes, and sometimes things work out. And it was very organic in that way.
What was a notable failure?
Well, I think there have been more notable failures, both professionally and personally. Then there have been successes, but I think losing money is never fun. Mm. As a trader, whenever you have a bad day, even today, if I've had a bad day, it will affect me at some level. So there have been plenty of those.
But you've obviously had a few good days as well, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a story or an example about when you learned about diversification? Because that's one of the things that within equities, within the markets in general, once you've learned that lesson, you never forget it.
Yeah, I think we're getting a lesson in diversification today. With all the geopolitical nonsense that is going on in the world today, gold is suddenly doing well. Gold was an asset class which has been so uncool for so long that people didn't really have it in their portfolio. At least the millennials and the people in their 20s, they have very little exposure to that asset class. The volatility of the last quarter is teaching us why we need to diversify all over again. And that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, that has always held true. I think it will continue to hold true. Especially in the equity market, I never advise people to have maybe more than 20-30% of your total net worth in one asset class, even if it were to be equities.
We've definitely learned that in the last 6 months especially. So tell me, what was the environment like when you started trading in 2006, and specifically in India? What was that like?
Well, much easier than it is now. I think the competition is a lot harder today. Back then were the early days of the derivative markets in India. So India truly opened up in the 90s. We were fairly nationalized up until that point. And ever since then, ever since derivatives got introduced, at the very beginning, like in any market, there are many arbitrage possibilities. You can buy in one market, you can short sell in another market. With time and technology, a lot of them have gone away. But as a trader starting off, I would say the odds are stacked against you today a lot more than they were back then, just because of how underpenetrated the industry was.
So you went from that to managing portfolios for some high net worth individuals just a couple years after you started trading. Tell me, Tell me why that was and how, and a little bit about that journey.
Well, with trading, you're always defined by the amount of capital you have. And personally, as a prop shop, you can only ever have access to X amount of capital. To really scale, you need to go out, raise money, build a bigger pool, and then you become more relevant both as a trader, but also like we were talking earlier in terms of diversification. If you have a higher asset base, you get to diversify so much more. So it's a very natural progression to go from being a trader to being an asset manager, and I think it happened that way.
Not usually for people who are 19 years old, though, right? Tell me a little bit more about the trust that people were putting into you then.
Well, to be fair, I don't think it was significant amounts of money. Looking back, it was like really small amounts of money, but people were always looking to take a punt on something new. And trading very much works on track record, much less on reputation. So if you have a track record and you've made money, you will often find people who will give you their money to manage.
So now you've got over 4 million users. Zerodia is the country's largest retail brokerage platform, facilitating orders of $10 billion a day, accounting for about 18% of the daily equity volume in India. An incredible achievement. But let's pause here and think about this idea of financial inclusion. And if we look over the history of the stock markets, if you have been able to participate in the stock markets, then you have benefited, as long as you've diversified, right? But if you don't have access to those markets, then you haven't. And it's not just in India, but all over the world we see inequality growing on any measure you can find. So I'd love to get your thoughts on how we extend what you've been able to do to some of those folks who don't have access yet.
Yeah, sure. So, education is a big need in India. I think we're not very pragmatic about our system of pedagogy in a way. We spend 15 years teaching somebody how to earn a wage, but we don't spend much time teaching them how to manage the money once they do earn a wage. So the Indian markets are not very large. By volume they are, but in terms of participation they aren't. Out of the 1.4 billion people that we have, only about 2% of our population has either direct or indirect equity exposure. Like you were saying, you were originally from the US. Your 401k, some part of that money goes into equity. We don't have such a thing. So you would probably have 40-50% penetration, whereas we have 2. So plenty has to be done to change that. But when you sit back and look at the larger problem in India, only about 3% or 4% of a country pays income tax. So you'll have to increase the banking penetration, get more people to pay tax, in turn get more people to save and invest using a formal method like the stock markets are. So I think we're a long way away, but things seem to be changing, and more people are coming onto the financial ecosystem today, which I guess is a good thing.
So this session is around global disruptors, and you believe that there hasn't been enough disruption in wealth management, not just in India, but around the world. Tell me about what's behind that thought.
Well, we started an asset management company recently, so I have to say that. But I think the industry is quite fee heavy. There are lots of inefficiencies in terms of the number of middlemen there are. And I think there is room for somebody to disrupt that.
So tell me how you're doing it.
By being a lot cheaper than anybody else.
And what fees are you taking away?
So we don't charge you anything if you do not make money, which is already unlike everyone else out there. And if you were to turn a profit, if you invest $100 and make 110 out of it, we take 1 out of the $10 as a fee. And elsewhere you would have had to pay many times that as a fee.
And in terms of the amount you need to invest, are you disrupting that as well?
Well, I like how this is becoming a marketing pitch for our asset management company.
Don't worry, we'll move on.
Yeah, but on average, our ticket sizes are around $2 million. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about the significance of the Gujarati International Tech City, the GIFT City. Tell me what you're doing there and why it's important.
Well, GIFT is relevant because it has better taxation than being onshore in India. So the Indian markets, right, out of 100 rupees of turnover that happens, about 85 or 90 of that happens on a leveraged instrument called derivatives. And if you were to trade derivatives through GIFT, you pay 0 tax. Otherwise, you pay 42% tax, depending on what slab you fall under. So for reasons around taxation and the fact that compliance is a lot simpler at GIFT, I think GIFT is relevant. It also kind of eliminates the need for feeder countries. Up until now, we had countries like Mauritius, Singapore, the Cayman Islands, where people went in there. Say you as an American or a Brit would go into Mauritius and then come into India. But with GIFT, you get to avoid that hop and you save the cost associated with that hop.
And so it's a special economic zone.
Yeah.
And there's no taxation on derivatives and
Correct.
futures. And it is aiming to open India as a global destination. For investments, are you seeing that already?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we did not see too much traction in GIFT initially. But over the last year, things are really picking up, and I see a lot more traction around GIFT. I think the government is doing a good job in promoting it, and the fact that the regulator is also sitting inside of GIFT makes a big difference.
So we spoke a little bit about how you get more financial inclusion. You've touched on that, but you've started an educational platform called Varsity together with your brother. Tell us about what that aims to do.
A lot of financial education available online freely is often riddled with jargon which is unnecessary. So Varsity is an attempt to simplify what is already available, but is said in a very complicated manner. So me or my brother have nothing to do with it. We have a guy called Karthik who wrote the entire thing on his own. He's an incredible author, and he has kind of like compiled this knowledge over many years, and he runs Varsity. And the fact that it is free and it explains most financial concepts relevant to India, I think it's useful to a lot of people.
Tell us about how you're looking to help others. When you invest in startups, what are you looking for? What do you find that gets you going when you're looking to invest?
Well, whenever you start something new, it is exciting. To be part of somebody else's journey is vicariously interesting in a way. So every startup that we're very, very much the level 1 or angel investors. So we get these companies where they're in between 0 to 1. So to be part of a team which is excited, evolving rapidly and doing interesting things is something to look forward to in life. It gives you a reason to kind of like wake up and do the same thing again.
Do you solely look within fintech, or do you look within other areas as well?
Well, we look everywhere, but typically we tend to end up doing stuff in fintech because we understand that a little better than the other industries. So I would say like 80% fintech and the rest outside of that.
What about your attitude towards philanthropy? Because it's a different way to give people a starting hand. Do you have a different hat on when you look at where you give your money away to?
Not particularly. I think you rely upon smarter people and people with more information in the philanthropic world to kind of determine where money should go. Like we have Amitabh here, the guy in the first table there. I think he's running an incredible charity called Young India Philanthropy Pledge. So it encourages young people to give away or commit to give away about 25% of their net worth. And I think one of the great things about the charity, I don't know if he broached it, is the fact that YIP never actually accepts money. It's just a group of people who come together, decide where they should give money, and YIP is more the place where you ideate and figure out where the money should go. So I think they're doing an incredible job, and anybody here who wants to kind of participate should definitely check it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that what you're doing? You're giving away 25%?
Yeah.
Great. So a couple minutes left. Why don't we have a look at the markets? Because as you mentioned, it's not been an easy time for investors, but I saw on the news that you were saying not to buy the dip just yet. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so notwithstanding the correction we have seen already, markets are still very expensive. If you were to look at the multiples in the market today compared to any time in our own history, they are still, on the higher side. We've seen a correction which is about 15% from the top, but we've forgotten that we rallied 100% from the bottom. So I don't think saying the market is cheap is a reasonable way to value what's going on. And hence I believe, err more on the side of caution and do not start building vanilla portfolios today.
Okay. Yeah. What advice do you have on some of the emerging asset classes, like cryptocurrencies?
Well, I'm conflicted about cryptocurrencies. For a long time, I did not understand how they truly work. But even today, I'm more open to crypto today than I was maybe a few years ago. I don't think crypto is based on, say, proof of work or proof of stake will work like the prevalent ones today. But a new mechanism of creating crypto tomorrow where the cost of verifying a transaction is significantly smaller has many use cases, especially in a geopolitical environment which has a lot of turmoil. And so you can't really call the future, but I think at some level, maybe there is a use case for crypto.
All right. Final thing, got some members of the government, of course, here. Anything the government could be doing better for you, for your markets?
So Ashwatthana is doing more than anybody could be doing. I think he is, he's one of the, I can be candid here because he's also a friend. Out of all the politicians that we have, he's a doctor. He is probably the most soft-spoken politician you will ever meet. I mean, when you meet him on stage next, you will realize. And he really cares and, tries to make a difference, especially in the startup ecosystem. And he's somebody, who champions our cause a lot.
Okay. Anything he could do better?
Well, there's always more that can be done, but, I don't want to be the one talking about political parties today. I met a lot of politicians since morning because you've had events. But I think they're in the right direction, doing the right things. And considering the BJP won again in UP, it looks like we'll have stability for a certain amount of time, which I guess is a good thing.
Which is a good thing. Nikhil, thank you so much for joining us here at India Global Forum. We'll be right back.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome back. We move on now to our next session under the title of Made in Karnataka, Global Unicorn Breeding Ground. Well, Karnataka has an enviable track record in creating unicorns, widely seen as a home for unicorns and also soonicorns. From best-in-class educational institutions to multiple incubation centres, just what is Karnataka's secret sauce? Well, time now to find out in our next session, and it's a great pleasure and an honour to have two ministers here for this next session, or just one minister for this next session. I do apologise. So please do give a very warm welcome. It's a great privilege to have here with us today Dr. Ashwath Narayan, Minister of Science and Technology, Higher Education and Information Technology and Biotechnology for the Government of Karnataka.
Hi.
Wonderful to have you here. Please do take a seat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A great pleasure to have you here. Now, before we get started, I wanted to actually give you a chance to respond to our previous guest, Nikhil. He gave you a lot of praise on what you're doing at the moment for entrepreneurship and the startup economy here and things like that as well. So what is your reply to him? Because he was also saying that there is still a little bit to be done as well. So what's your reply?
State of Karnataka, and particularly Bangalore, the innovation, the technology, entrepreneurship has become a culture here. And this has been the strength of the state of Karnataka. Probably we are lucky for really to have this kind of environment, this progressive, and it is a future looking because of the talent of the people who live here and the kind of collaboration which has happened earlier has facilitated and it has encouraged for the state of Karnataka to become a very fertile area to take it forward. And more so, all the governments in state of Karnataka, whichever government, irrespective of the political party, we have been, encouraging a lot of technology and entrepreneurship and startups, innovation, and it's become a real culture, and the state of Karnataka is placed as a #1 state in the entire country for the innovation and for the startups. We are in the top position. And more so, the Bangalore city, from the time of independence, the science was more based in the city of Bangalore. And it's more called as in a science city. Science has led to the further growth of the technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship and startups. And startup has really picked up, and it's really a pride of Karnataka youngster and entrepreneur like our unicorn, Nikhil, have been a pride of the state of Karnataka. They've been doing extremely well. And they've been an inspiration. And more so, for many of the youngsters to become entrepreneurs, we have been always, our Honorable Prime Minister has always been advocating, be a job creator. Probably this kind of talent and entrepreneurship can facilitate and encourage much more to happen. And state has been, we are inculcating and perpetuating this kind of culture, and it becomes a part of our society.
Well, Karnataka, especially Bengaluru's contribution to building India's tech sector really is significant. You've also been linked as India's Silicon Valley. What does that sort of tag mean to you as well? And what sort of factors do you feel have brought on the success story of this area?
To be really very frank, earlier in South India, we had to tell where Bangalore is, it was very difficult. Now, past 2 decades, it is so easy. In India, one city is very well known across the world is Bangalore. You need not tell anything. If you tell Bangalore, people will know which place is that. So, since Silicon Valley, other than the Silicon Valley of the California, the Silicon Valley of India, we have got really that kind of recognition that has made a huge difference. Each and every person of the state of Karnataka, we feel really proud and pride that we are the Silicon Valley of the India. Now we are expecting it to be part of the better position since all the system has become much more mature. And we are getting very good encouragement, and potentially we do have a lot of skilled manpower which can cater to the entire world. That is the kind of talent we do have in the state of Karnataka. We have talent coming from across the country, from across the world. And this has become a real place where the technology has been encouraged, the innovation has been encouraged, and it's become the most happening place. So this has led to the worldwide recognition. See, now we feel really good that we can see our future here itself. We need not go anywhere. We can see our future here. If you look at the numbers, we have much more numbers than the Silicon Valley of California also. When it comes to the valuation, we are far behind. When it comes to the numbers, probably in the skilled manpower, we have much more higher numbers. Even now, there's a huge potential. Even now, there's a demand for more than 4 lakh skilled employees. Even now, the opportunity is open.
And now that you've really made a name for yourself, it's going to become even more and more popular. We actually had a session earlier on brand building, and that it really is that, isn't it? It's building the brand of the area, of course, as well. So what are you thinking in terms of sort of multiple areas of excellence going forward, and how you're looking to stay ahead of the curve in the future?
In this direction, we have been working very closely, collaborating with the industry, and bringing out with very good policies. Whatever policies, we were the first state to come out with an IT policy, startup policy, ESDM policy, supported by Government of India. Along with that, engineering R&D policy also. Engineering R&D policy, so far it was not existing. We come out with a new engineering R&D policy. Now in future, we are coming out with much more initiatives. Probably establishment of the Karnataka Digital Economy Mission also is facilitating in a very big way. It's really a good organization, one of its kind. And similar kind of organization has been established in Singapore. On the similar lines, we were the first state and a country in India, we were the first state in the world. Probably after Singapore, we were the second one. So by thereby establishing a digital economy mission, it will become as a bridge and facilitate whatever required cooperation between the industry, and the industry is part of the government. It's not outside, it's inside part of the government. And we have a lot of vision group for IT, biotechnology, and for vision group for nanotechnology, and as well as newly started for startups, to exclusively to ensure the startup concern can be addressed very well. And we have established Innovation Authority. Now the sandbox used to be earlier restricted to few sectors. Here this innovation is open for any sector. So whatever is the shortcomings in the law will not come in the way of any innovation. And we were the first people, probably this establishment under the law to come out with an innovation authority, we were the first people. And like this, we have come out with many policies. In future also, we are coming out with many policies, incentives, and more so to ensure the availability of the skilled manpower also. We are improvising the quality of education and the quality industry ready. Once they pass out, they should be industry ready and employable, and a dynamic personality, a holistic personality with all kind of talents, diverse talents, we are ensuring, so that we should not be second to none in the qualities in the terms of skilled manpower and learning. So we are establishing in a very big way.
Speaking of talent, when we sort of look at the global picture, are you doing anything to incentivize global talent to come here to Karnataka at all? Is there any incentives at all?
Probably the opportunity is plenty here. See, we are not reached any saturation. There's opportunity, plenty of opportunities there for them to do business and to make a better future. Probably this is a most fertile, and the employees availability also at a very low cost, cost effective, and availability and ecosystem, the venture capitalists, the industry, the government is very facilitating environment. And more so the incentives, we are willing to provide land, whatever establishments, particularly with regard to the electronics. We are also in the terms of, we are discussing with Rajiv Chandrasekharji, is our Minister for Electronics and Skill Development. And we have been working closely to make Karnataka as the Make in Karnataka encouragement as a policy we want to initiate, and ensure whatever the requirement of our country and for the entire world can be catered from here. So in this direction, we are coming out with a lot of incentives. Whoever wants to establish establishments, we are providing land. In the terms of incentives with regard to the plant and machineries, more than up to 50% it has been provided.
there has been a phenomenal amount of unicorns that have come out of Karnataka. So why is the ground so fertile here to produce unicorns, essentially?
It has happened because the chemistry is good and chemistry is good and the ecosystem is really built because of all the stakeholders. All the stakeholders have come together and made it as an ideal place. Probably it has clicked and people from diverse background from various parts of the country, irrespective of state, people have come here and made their home and they've been working. They are all the real cause for the success. And the government also, we have been very closely working with all the companies and more so the government of India, the digitalization drive. The digitalization and encouragement from government of India has set the real foundation. If not for the government of India, digitalization and for the seeding of the Aadhaar has facilitated things to happen in minutes and days. Otherwise, in earlier condition, it would have been really difficult for any of the startups to do well. We need to really acknowledge our most dynamic Prime Minister, Narendra Modi ji. Because of his initiatives, the entire country has been performing, doing well. It's been forward-looking, right, left, center. The reforms are brought in. In every small sector, let it be a small or big sector, we can witness what is the need of the hour will be done immediately. We don't even have to ask him. He'll start, would have been churning out and working in this direction. Really, that has facilitated for the state to become the most ideal place for the startups to do well. And most of the unicorn, the culture, and there have been, very good opportunities, good opportunities, mentoring, encouragement, incubators. There are plenty of incubators, there are plenty of venture capitalists, and the cross-pollination. American companies also most responsible. See, many of the American companies, the first one to establish also was Texas Instrument, and among the Fortune 500 companies, 400 are based in Bangalore, GCCs, GICs, R&D. More than 51% of the R&D houses are based in Bangalore. So there are plenty of talent. See, talent availability, institutions have made a real difference. All the combination, everything came together and ensured that this has become the most fertile and future-looking. And in future, 80% or 75% of the unicorns only will be from Bangalore and Karnataka.
Wow. It's a big statement as well. There we go. You heard it here first. Speaking of talent and the youth, I think I was speaking with Minister Chandrasekhar yesterday, and we were talking about how, becoming an entrepreneur is a very big thing for a lot of the youth at the moment, isn't it? It's quite a fashionable thing to do. And it's a thing that, a lot of people want to get into. I'm married to an entrepreneur, and I understand that it's a 24-hour job. If you want to go anywhere, correct? So I was just wondering, what your sort of advice would be to the youth that are looking to get into this sector, and what are the warning signs, but what are the main sort of like opportunities as well? What go hand in hand?
So the most important places are the academic institution. Now we are extending it to all the institutions, the incubators. Incubators are established in most of the institutions. Thereby, they've been given very good mentorship, guidance, and encouragement, and whatever facilitation, even the seed money has been provided through many programs. Seed money and venture capital and mentorship, facility, common instrumentation facilities, and co-working spaces. Like this, it has been provided across the state. Even in the most remote place, we have come out with a very good policy to encourage all the institutions to establish very good incubators across the state of Karnataka. And most of the technical institutions also, we have revised the entire curriculum. We have revised the curriculum. Now we are encouraging. Earlier, the internship used to be only for 4 weeks. Now it is there for the 36 weeks. They've been allowed to have the internship in best of the best companies. We are asking them to facilitate this kind of collaboration. Thereby, their quality of learning will become good and their entrepreneurship attitude will increase, and we are trying to ensure that holistic development of a person, so that by personality also, normally the STEM student, most of them will be introverts. So we want each and every person to become an extrovert, open up, do well, acquire as possible the leadership qualities and the hobbies, and more so connect with all the things, because this has become the most happening place. The state of Karnataka has become the most happening place, and most of our entrepreneurs are the startup people, the industry people have been reaching out each and every institution. They've been reaching out, they've been collaborating, they've been working in various programs. And I think thereby the steady supply or the sustenance can happen in the entrepreneurship, we can see in future in a very big numbers. Probably the numbers will become much more bigger.
Very exciting time for the state, it really is. Minister, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. What an honour to have you here on the stage with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Ashwath Narayan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to continue with our next very special guest. Please give a very warm welcome. It's a great honour to invite back on the stage Rajiv Chandrasekhar, the Minister of State for Skill Development, Entrepreneurship, Electronics and IT for the Government of India. Please do come on up to say a few words. Thank you.
Just me?
Yes.
Oh, really? Ambushing me second time.
Let me come back and join you. Just to grab a sip of water there. Yes, so welcome back.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on Dr. Ashwath and his sort of conversation about the fertile ground for unicorns here? And yeah, what's your sort of take on that? Tell us more.
Look, I think him and his chief minister are doing an excellent job. They have created, a tremendous amount of momentum in Karnataka in terms of building on the policies of the government of India. And he mentioned very rightly that Karnataka and Bengaluru have had a long history of innovation, entrepreneurship. But to take that to the next level, to make Bengaluru this almost center of gravity to this internationally known, globally recognized startup innovation ecosystem is excellent work that they've done, and more power to him, and I hope he continues to do that.
What do you think are the main roadblocks in particular for the state? What do you feel still needs to be done?
No, I think, look, I think we touched on this yesterday. I think the biggest challenge now is to ensure that this whole digital opportunity and the technology opportunity doesn't get concentrated in just a few cities in India. There are, 1.2 billion Indians. A large number of that, large percentage of that are youth, young Indians. This genie that has been unleashed by our Honorable Prime Minister's vision is a genie that has essentially catalyzed the young Indian everywhere. So the challenge really at a ministerial level, at a public policy level, is to be able to ensure that these opportunities at entrepreneurship, at startups are available as they are in Bengaluru. They should be available in Mysore, Hubli, Dharwad, and the other cities of Karnataka, and so too in the other parts of India. So that, I think, is a very, very important thrust area for us at the Government of India. And I believe it is the same for most state governments, because this inclusion of people onto this clearly emerging, growing, expanding phenomenon of innovation and entrepreneurship is something that is, in my opinion, priority number one.
Going back to the forum, you've been here, this is your second day here as well. Do you have any sort of key highlights or takeaways that you'd like our audience to go away with, especially when it comes to the New India Inc. as well?
No, I think, look, and I want to thank Manoj and all of you for doing this, for bringing the IGF to Bengaluru, because it is actually very, very important, in my opinion, for this narrative of the Indian success and the growing success of the Indian startup ecosystem to be projected all across the world. And it's important that these stories that we talked about today in the morning and we engaged with is a story that's not just heard in Bengaluru or in Delhi, but it's a story that's heard across the country and across the world. Because what we are setting out to do today is, like I said yesterday, this is just the beginning of the beginning. And I genuinely believe that the next 2 to 3 years will see such a deeper, wider expansion of this innovation ecosystem in India of a type that is unprecedented, at least in the history of India. And I think this is something that most countries are going to be awestruck by. And I'm not saying that because I want to take credit for it or anybody wants to take credit for it, but it is really, truly the unleashing of the Indian potential, the great story of the Indian potential.
Really, really exciting time. And I mean, we touched on the youth yesterday as well, and I was, saying to the other minister how, with entrepreneurship, and, it's a very sort of trendy thing to get into, but obviously it is a 24-hour job. Do you think people need to be more aware of what they're getting into? Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity, and you want the best minds, to become startups, essentially. But tell us what your thoughts are on that.
No, look, when I was young, the big thing was to be a pilot, and everybody thought it was the easiest thing to just get into an aeroplane and fly. Till you started learning to be a pilot, and you realized that you need to really go through a grind to learn how to fly. It's the same thing for entrepreneurship. I think it is good that every young Indian, or most young Indians today, want to be entrepreneurship. They want to not depend on somebody else to define their future, but they want to define their future themselves. That, in my opinion, is a big, big tectonic cultural change in the last 6 or 7 years. Having said that, of course, I think any mountain that you attempt to climb is not going to be a walk in the park. And I think people will learn these things from their own personal experiences. There is no little button that says, press here to be an entrepreneur, and press here to be a unicorn, and press there to be a multi-billion-dollar unicorn, or whatever. I think people will learn this, and they are learning that. There are failures, there are risks, there are ups and there are downs in this journey. But the fact that despite all of that, more and more young Indians want to join this journey, experience for themselves, take that risk, experience the ups and downs of it, in my opinion, it just has to be very good.
Would you advise students to go and get experience elsewhere, to get the experience and then come back? What's your take on that?
No, what I tell when I go to universities and colleges and schools, and I speak to people about entrepreneurship, or they ask me about it, I say simply one thing. Entrepreneurship is built on some specific skill or passion that you develop. And so traditionally, schooling in India has been, you bring the textbooks home, you read what is in the textbook, or you listen to what the teacher tells you, and then go give an exam and then graduate on. But to try and discover, and thanks to the new education policy, this is becoming increasingly part of the curriculum, try and discover skills and abilities that you believe you have and that you're passionate about, or you can develop a passion for, in addition to those textbooks and those studies. So whether it's coding on one end, or it's carpentry, or it's something else, automobile repair, or whatever it is, it depends. Everybody finally will find a calling, some skill, and it is necessary to consciously develop that as you go through the schooling system. And that's what I tell everybody. And I think if you do that, then it's possible to develop alternate careers to just following the beaten path of higher education and finding a job.
Yeah, what has your experience been of the IGF platform in a wrap-up sentence? Very much like we did yesterday, but...
No, look, I'm truly grateful and thankful for the IGF for doing what it's doing, which is not giving me airtime. That's not the point. That's not what I'm thanking you for. I think really to pitch the India story, and do so at a global level, in a global arena, on a global stage, is something that is very, very necessary and appropriate, and the timing is just right, just because this is the inflection point for growth. And at this stage, if more and more investors around the world, more and more corporates around the world see that this India story is really a durable, sustainable, and a real one, because we aim to bring in investments from the big semiconductor people, we aim to bring investments from the big electronics giants. We have ambitions that are newly discovered ambitions post-COVID. And it's very necessary as part of that to realize that ambition, that the story of India, the story of real innovation, entrepreneurship, the role of the government, the role of public policy in creating this kind of an ecosystem is real, and that the investors in New York, London, Singapore, and wherever Manoj takes the show, including Dubai, the investors here hear the story.
Very quickly before we finish, what has been your experience throughout? Have you just been to Dubai, or did you do the London leg as well?
No, I did just Dubai.
Just Dubai.
Yeah.
So how has it compared this time? That was quite an interesting to get
Dubai
your point
versus
on that.
Bangalore, you mean?
Yes.
No, look, Bangalore is home for me, so obviously I think this is a much better show than the Dubai one. But if I get a little sensible for a minute, Dubai was important in that it was showcasing to the world what India was doing. In Bangalore, it is about, in a sense, celebrating our success and talking about what we want to do more. So these are two slightly different conversations that we are having. Both are equally important, but if you want me to rank them, I'll rank Dubai 1 and Bangalore 2, in terms of importance, not quality.
Fantastic speaking with you as always. I'm so glad we've been able to share the stage once again.
Thank you very
Ladies
much.
and gentlemen, let's hear it for Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Thank you so much. Thank you. And yes, we will also be hearing from the Minister and Manoj a little later on for our key wrap-up, I think. Or maybe just Manoj. There we go. Wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, we have one last very important conversation to have now here in Bengaluru. We have the Honourable Minister's words just there about how pitching that India Inc. story is so absolutely vital. So our final session now is going to be around how do we build on what we've seen so far in India, and how do we accelerate the next financial building blocks? How do we use what we've learned here in India to benefit the wider world? So I've got a couple of people joining me virtually, and then I've also got one person joining me on stage. First of all, let's introduce the virtual panelist. We have the co-founder of Alpha Wave Global, Navraz Udwadia. How are you? Are you there?
Good. Yep, good, thank you.
All right, nice to see you. And we love to be dynamic and inclusive as well. So coming to us from the lounge in Heathrow, delighted to see the co-founder and CEO of True Beacon, Richard Patel. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Edie. And sorry I can't be there in person. I'm going to miss you by about 12 hours, but thank you for including me today.
Absolutely. And also I want to welcome up here to the stage, partner at Excel, Prasant Prakash. Thanks very much. You can come and sit here closer to me, otherwise it feels too lonely over here. So why don't we start, let's start with Navraz first of all. The Indian tech startup ecosystem has really undergone some seismic change over the last few years. In your experience, what changes have you seen in the investment landscape?
Several, I think. First, I think the degree of entrepreneurial ambition and energy has never been higher. That's a function of one whole India Tech 1.0 having developed, scaled, created a huge number of mini or micro entrepreneurs who are now have some capital at their disposal, have relationships with people such as the Tigers and the Alpha Waves of the world, and so are willing to step out of the Tech 1.0 names, the Flipkarts and the Paytms and the Zomatos, and create their own businesses and their own adventures. So I think that's number one. I think business models, certainly business models that I invest in, whether it's Swiggy or Lenskart or Moglix or off business, they're now starting to look outside of India, which I think is healthy once you've established yourselves as either dominant or quasi-dominant in your home market. So I think business models are taking the first steps to kind of build more diversified revenue streams. I think in India also, just as a macro backdrop, which I think is particularly relevant given what's going on in the world right now, we're rapidly approaching the S-curve of consumption, the bottom of the S-curve, which is $5,000 to $10,000 of GDP per capita, at which point there's a nonlinear explosion in discretionary purchasing power and discretionary income. And I mean, we've seen this play out in dozens of economies over a century, and so there's no reason why India shouldn't be any different. And then lastly, people like Prakash have contributed to the building of a very, very strong and vibrant ecosystem. We, for example, have a $400-500 million early stage fund that is very focused on India. We have a $10 billion fund, of which a significant amount of capital is focused on late stage India. The pool of capital that is focused on different silos in the investing spectrum on India has deepened considerably. So I think these are kind of 4 or 5 big changes that we've seen.
Point, because it's one of the things that I come from Silicon Valley, and there's always a lot of discussion about the ecosystem, how important it is. Tell us from your view what you think has been built here.
So first of all, it's great to have a true hybrid. We've been talking about these hybrid conferences, but it's good to be in one. So I think the part that really has accelerated stuff in India is the digital rails that have been built. So if you look at the first large company that got built out of your Flipkart, for them to get to the first million customers took them maybe 4 or 5 years. The next big company, let's say somebody like a Swiggy, took them 2 or 3 years to get them to 1 million customers. And today, because UPI and the payment ecosystem and just the habits that have been formed from, I think habits and how people behave, and that juxtaposed with the Gen Zs and how they start becoming the key drivers of change. I think all of that starts kind of snowballing, and the time to get critical mass is getting more and more compressed. So I think that is the biggest change that we have seen in the ecosystem. And once you see that compress, I think there is more capital that comes in, because capital goes where you can get money in and make more out of it faster, right? So we've benefited a lot from that. And finally, the China +1 thing, right? So where people started really seeing this ecosystem as a more broad-based entrepreneurship. I think people miss that. I think India not only builds technology for all the great opportunities we have here in India, but we are actually the technology powerhouse, digital powerhouse for the world. Like the minister was saying, I think that talent is, of course, there to build for the back offices of the world. The Google of the world is going to build the next product from here. Intel is going to build the next product. But there are new entrepreneurs who are building technology products ground up in India, not serving just the customers in India. Very few of their customers actually are in India, but in 40 other countries. So that is the other big change, where entrepreneurs are building enterprise-grade products, which is what Israeli entrepreneurs were able to, and quickly migrate value to the US and build sales and marketing. So that is starting to happen. So there's this nice twin engine now working in India. Entrepreneurs building for the country and entrepreneurs building for the rest of the world, and both are firing.
Well, speaking of the rest of the world, Richard, let's come to you. Let's get your view in terms of someone who's operated around the world, in terms of what you found interesting and unique about working in India. We've had your colleague on from True Peak and Nikhil, but let's hear from you, your thoughts.
Yeah, I think particularly now it's an incredibly exciting time for India. I think that I'm now very fortunate to live and operate in Bangalore. I've become an entrepreneur very late in life. But I think in terms of India in general, but perhaps Karnataka in particular, you now have a unique crossroads where human capital has been connected to vast opportunity. Both the government of India and the state government has done an exceptional job about creating the right conditions for businesses and entrepreneurs to thrive. And I think that I've been very fortunate. I've been coming to the country now for 30 years or so. I see now a level of ambition that, as Prashant has said earlier on, doesn't just extend to building exceptional businesses across India, although that is a very compelling market, of course, for anyone. But now entrepreneurs are also focused on building businesses for the rest of the world. And I think that's what's really changed vis-a-vis Silicon Valley, perhaps over the last 5 years or so. And I think that's why Bangalore in particular, but the entire country now is obviously becoming a world leader in so many different areas. And I think it's, for foreigners like me, what an exciting place to be, hopefully for the next 10 or 20 years.
So, Navraz, let's ask you, if we're building businesses here in Bengaluru that could go everywhere else in the world, how do we finance this next stage of growth? What sectors are investors, do you believe, looking forward to investing in?
Sure. I can't really talk to others. I can share what we're looking at internally. I spend approximately 50% of my time on Web 3.0. It is a critical part of how we think about the world going forward. We have a dedicated team, literally what I would call my SWAT team internally, where all they do is spend time in this space. We have $1.5 billion out of our new $10 billion fund that's dedicated explicitly and exclusively to Web 3.0. And it is the only aspect of our investing that we haven't slowed down in this current market environment, which I'm quite pessimistic about, not just in terms of where starting point valuations were, as Nikhil alluded to on the panel before me, but also the global read on what's happening in Europe with Russia and Ukraine and how that could impact India. So whether it's L1s and L2s, or whether it's critical parts of infrastructure like market makers, wallets, or dApps, we are spending a lot of time on the crypto landscape, and we've made, I think, about 20 investments over the last year in that space. The other more traditional spaces that we're focused on are fintech and SaaS, but in both cases, there have been fairly significant multiple re-ratings. 5 years ago, you could buy best-in-class global SaaS names at publicly listed at 10 times revenues. Today in the private markets, something that does $2 or $3 million of revenue trades at 250 to 300 or 500 even. I have an example where a very well-known India-focused firm did around $500 million on a SaaS company doing $3 million of revenue. So we're waiting for that deflation to happen. It's already happened in the public markets. Private markets, yes, tend to lag public markets. So we're kind of sitting patiently and waiting for some degree of sanity to return to SaaS and fintech valuations. But SaaS, fintech, Web 3.0, and consumer internet are spaces that we spend a lot of time on.
Interesting. I wanted to know, Prasant, if you want to build on that. And the other thing I'd love to know is, how have investments in India's tech ecosystem, or New India Inc., fared versus other global benchmarks, would you say?
So on the first one, we work very closely with Navroz, and I think a lot of the sectors are very common in terms of, VCs are known to do things in herds. And,
around the world, not just in India, right?
But outside of Web3 and SaaS and crypto, what Navroz was talking about, B2B in this part of the world is still a very fertile and important sector. So in the Western geographies, the whole supply chain, manufacturing, and the demand chains were all very well organized over 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. Technology slowly kind of seeped into that. Organization of those supply chains happened over many years. So here, all that is what happened in 50 years in those countries is happening in 10 years, thanks to technology and thanks to digitization. So that acceleration of efficiency in B2B is giving rise to a lot of very India-specific opportunities, and this is a very interesting thing that we are seeing. And they can be replicated in Indonesia, replicated in other countries, which kind of miss the kind of the broad industrial revolution and the industry 3.0, 2.0 kind of technology, efficiency. I mean, because US just did that for 20, 30 years, right? Just drove efficiency into industry. So that just didn't happen here. So now technology entrepreneurs are not afraid of going and tackling, these industrial grade problems and not stopping at just delivering food and groceries home. So I think that's a very important new opportunity in the country. Now what was the other question that you had? How are we different here? Or how have
investments in India's tech ecosystem fared versus other global benchmarks?
See, this is a very good question. I think what our entrepreneurs have learned, there was this, it's important to talk about, this is not the first wave of entrepreneurship, right? You had the IT industry, a $200 billion IT industry has been created in this country. There has been a large wave of entrepreneurship, and what the IT industry has done well, of course, they took time to do what they did, but I think they have been able to build very enduring, robust, profit-generating businesses. And today, if you look at the top 10 IT companies globally, 6 or 7 of them are Indian, right? So that's how big a transformation they have done for an industry, which is a $1 trillion industry, and it's about 200 to 250 billion right here in India. Now, in the startup world, we have created $250 billion of market cap. But will this market cap endure? If it has to endure, you have to really understand how to build durable economics. You have to understand, these entrepreneurs have to understand how to now shift from just scaling to scaling profitably. And when you go IPO, there are a whole other set of challenges. How you kind of take companies public and answer investors quarter on quarter and deliver predictably quarter on quarter. So all these have not been areas that the current unicorns have been tested with. So I'm just kind of, that's a word of caution that I think this is something that tech startups in the US have learned over decades in the technology, not in the services space, but in technology and product. These companies have done it over years, and I think it's time for Indian entrepreneurs to demonstrate that. And just to put it, maybe it's a little bit of, I think there has to be over time less natak and more true delivery. Heads down delivery of profits, and that's what investors will look for.
Get on with it. So I want to bring Richard in. I'm nervous about you missing your flight, so I promise we'll let you get onto the plane on time. But I know that something that you think quite deeply about is GIFT, the Gujarati International Financial City. I'd love you to tell me about that and its significance.
Yeah, GIFT was started several years ago. The Prime Minister of India had the foresight when he was Chief Minister to really grapple with the issue that India needed a financial services centre that could be a gateway for international capital to come into the country, but to also be an ecosystem. And so for those who haven't been to GIFT, I would strongly recommend going there, just outside Ahmedabad. But it is what they've created there is not only world-class infrastructure, but also, more importantly, since they have adopted a unified regulator around 2 years ago, enshrined all of the tax treatment for investors properly into the tax codes of India, they've really created a very highly competitive jurisdiction for international investors, both for monies and investments flowing in and out of India, but more importantly as an ecosystem. So I think that for international investors who perhaps had to grapple with other jurisdictions such as Mauritius, Singapore in the past, now they can have the best of both worlds. They can have a financial center that's in India, but it has offshore status. So we were very proud in Trubeacon to be the first operational hedge fund there. You've got many of the international banking and financial services centres setting up in GIF now, and indeed, obviously, all of the domestic players too. So I'm very excited about where that jurisdiction can go in the future. And I think it's high time that India had a world-class centre. The infrastructure is there. We're still building, obviously, the human capital that will make it a very competitive ecosystem. But I would say to anyone who hasn't experienced GIFT, go and have a look at the centre, go and talk to them. They're highly entrepreneurial and manages to combine world-class regulatory standards, but with a very entrepreneurial spirit.
Now, Rose, what about this question? How can India continue to benefit the wider world with the lessons of its own digital and technological transformation?
I think two things that kind of come to mind. One is continuing to build the ecosystem via capital, and as Prashant said, all of us capital providers have a responsibility to cut out a lot of the I think Prashant described it as natak, which I would agree with completely, out of the ecosystem, and really focus on building dominant businesses with sustainable competitive advantages and a path to real unit economics. There's been a lot of press recently about one of India's major fintechs and all of the natak that's been going on there. And these kind of episodes and outcomes are really bad for the ecosystem as a whole. And I think that we sort of all have a responsibility as fellow investors. We have seen a lot of founders. We are seasoned. We have muscle memory. It's really kind of incumbent on all of us to be good actors and not let these sort of outcomes happen and reach critical mass, which was reached in the case of this fintech. I think the other thing that would be great is in the US and in the UK, China, and even Israel, universities play a critical role in serving as a funnel between outstanding student and tech talent and access to people like Prashant and myself and Richard. And we don't really have that in India. And I think now is the right time for universities, whether in Karnataka or NCR or Mumbai, Maharashtra, to set up, MIT type entrepreneurial cells, R&D labs, and partner closely with people like ourselves and Axel, who we have great regard for, and funnel, serve as a conduit or a bridge of outstanding tech talent that they see coming through their pipeline and onto us. So I think these are two cases, having two kind of places of progression, having plentiful but good capital that is stewarded thoughtfully and with the utmost standards of integrity by all of us, and then finding a way for Indian universities to kind of echo what the US, Israeli, and English counterparts have done.
Thank you. So Richard, is there one thing you could say that India can pass on to other ecosystems, and is there anything that could be brought from another ecosystem to India?
Yeah, I think, on the plus side, without doubt, what's happening in Bangalore in particular, but across the country, is this remarkable human capital, young men and women who are highly educated, high aspirations, starting to have more of a global mindset as well. And I think that that, for me, as a foreigner living in India right now, is the thing that really stands out in terms of what is going to drive India over the next several decades. The extraordinary guys and girls who are building things in India, not afraid to fail, have got a very good mentality. I think in terms of accelerating what's happening now in India, I think that, to build on Navroz's point, I think that, India, although it's done an extraordinary job at government level and indeed at individual state level, not just in Karnataka, but other states around India, of telling the India story, I think that too often there are gatherings where we end up preaching to the converted, those people who already have access, they have, business dealings in India. I think now the real challenge for India is going out there internationally to those investors, those people who might come and partner with Indian business, and explain the extraordinary things that are going on in the country, explain why it's important to participate in the private markets and the public markets in India, explain how Indian businesses can contribute to them sitting in their country, and to really accelerate all of these business, entrepreneurial and investment ties around the world. So I'd say that I think is incredibly important. I know the government is doing a lot and it's been hampered, as we all have over the last 2 years, but now as we come out of the pandemic, I think there's no time to lose.
So much. Well, thank you very much to Navraz and to Richard. We really appreciate your time. Prasant, I'm going to get you to stay with me on stage, but thank you so much, Navraz and Richard. Look forward to seeing you maybe in person at another new India Global Forum soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Prasant, we're going to get you to stay on stage, but I want to invite Professor Manoj Ladwa to come back up with us. We're going to get Laura back up here as well. We're going to need one more chair.
So this is the surprise part of the...
That's very kind of you. Get the comfy chair. Thank you.
So, what an amazing couple of days it's been. Absolutely phenomenal. I wonder what you've heard of New India Inc., what it means to you, Prasant.
See, I think this has been a long time in the wait, right? I mean, something like this had to happen here. So it's really great, Manoj, that you kind of, incubated this, or seeded this conference here, because I think Bangalore, of course, everybody for a long time have known the outsourcing part of the city, and they've known the fact that there's a lot of tech talent, but the tech talent now playing a role in producing global quality products, right? I think that narrative has not, it's still not there. I think because like I mentioned, a lot of the tech talent has been deployed so far for producing the Flipkarts here, the Swiggys, the companies to serve the ecosystem here. But like I was just speaking to Manoj, what we can design here and what we can export as designed here in India and made here in India. And the reason that's happening is, I think the ability of today's youth here to absorb this global phenomena is at a different level. So Navroz was talking about crypto and Web3. That's really going to test Indian, because now you don't...
Testing the world, to be
testing
honest.
the world, but just India, even more, because there's no boundaries anymore. So there's no country in crypto, right? So there's no country in Web3. It's just a new universe. It's just a new world that we're all going to live in. Now, Indian entrepreneurs will have to still find their place in this, in what next 5-10 years could be a whole new world that we just can't fathom today, right? And like Nikhil was saying, 3 years ago, we were all naysayers. We were all, saying this could, crypto is, we just looked at this being some crazy stuff that's going to happen at the fringes and in the underworld. But now the digital currency aspect of crypto, I think is just going to transform as much as what from gold to, the current monetary system to whatever stock. This transformation is going to be as significant, and it's interesting to see how our ecosystem, our entrepreneurs, actually take on to this new challenge.
It really has been a very exciting couple of days full of very rich discussions, which is why I wanted to ask Manoj, what has surprised you the most on this leg of the tour, so to speak, because we obviously had Dubai in December. So what has surprised you the most, do you think?
Well, a couple of things have, and if I look back, my very first visit to Bangalore was actually 25 years ago, almost 25 years ago, to the first IT.com. And at the time, the city was already being seen as an IT capital, but an IT capital for outsourcing, body shopping. And 25 years on, and just over these last 48 hours or so that we've been here, I can see that there's a real mood for a major step change and to be the real center for innovation that will innovate for the world, a place where not only are ideas brought to, but ideas are created and ideas are shared. And that real step change I saw not only in my conversations with the unicorns, and you've backed many of these unicorns and startups as well, but also with people that haven't even started their entrepreneurship journey, but are finding inspiration from these discussions. The other area I found of interest, and I was listening very carefully, was how perhaps the genie is not yet out of the bottle as far as startups in Bangalore and Kannada thinking global from almost day one is, and I guess India Global Forum is about giving that opportunity or opening that possibility for that. I wanted to also respond to Prashant, but he used as a tech entrepreneur, the word seeding and seeding ideas and so on. Well, as India Global Forum, we seeded an idea about doing something in Bangalore. I guess we're a startup, but I've just had a conversation with the Honorable IT Minister, and I've promised him that we will be back here same time next year.
Right on.
Not quite as a unicorn, but certainly as a scale-up. And therefore, we'll be seeking the support of everybody here as well. And so we're really, really encouraged by that.
So if I may ask a question there, Manoj. The Honorable Minister, Rajiv Ji, he mentioned that there was maybe some few things more in Dubai that maybe Bangalore didn't bring to the table or we weren't able to do this time. So if there is something that we can do here in Bangalore to make sure that your next one is better than Dubai, happy to play a role.
I will send a note to the minister. And I'll send a note. So we'll have a reflection and certainly a consultation amongst all the stakeholders. And I regard everybody here as a stakeholder. And given that we've launched our IGF Investors network, of which you've kindly also agreed, I think that gives us many more excuses for interact and then really work out. But I am on a mission. And I'll tell you what that is. I've been listening for several times in the course of these 2 days how Bangalore is India's Silicon Valley. Well, you know what my mission is? I want a city somewhere else in the world to say, we are the next Bangalore or Bengaluru. It may not happen in the next 2, 3, 5 years, but I guarantee you in the next generation and the work that's being done here, we will be in that position. And I think that everybody who has been part of that ecosystem, whether it's the government or it's the private sector, the startups or the academia, all of them have had a hand to play in that. And like I said, I've been part of this journey for 25 years, and this affection, I can call it a love affection with Bangalore now, especially with the friends that I've made. So we're going to be really working on this. The other thing is that Bangalore is a year away, but the number of commitments I've had from friends, including around 18 or 20 of the unicorn founders, that you will all be joining us in London on the 29th and 30th June and the 1st of July for our India Global Forum there. That will really be that next step forward in our collaborative journey between Karnataka and India Global Forum. So I'm really pleased, and you've got no excuses. You've got to
I'll be there.
part and parcel of this journey.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Now, we've spoken about Dubai and the India Global Forum here in the beautiful Bengaluru. We're now going to play a short video before we talk about the London leg.
Yep.
We're live from India Global Forum, Bengaluru, bringing India to the world and the world to India. Our next India Global Forum will be in London on the 29th to the 30th of June. Join leading politicians, world business leaders and thought leaders as they discuss, debate and deliberate global geopolitical developments and their impact on India, the UK and how businesses can thrive in the face-changing global events through resilience, reinvention and regrowth. Plus, on the 1st of July, we'll be hosting the 4th UK India Awards, where we'll be joined by a star-studded group of over 300 VIP guests and influential figures from the world of politics, business and entertainment.
Absolutely looking forward to that, Manoj. But I also want to just say thank you so much for bringing us here. It's been an amazing, amazing trip, really fantastic. And it's probably a good time to thank the India Global Forum team, because there's a huge amount of work that goes into these conferences, isn't it? And it would be great to give everyone who's behind the scenes just a round of applause to show them how much we absolutely thank them. Well, I've had a fantastic time. I've learned an enormous amount, and so thank you very much. We're really looking forward to seeing you all in London and beyond.
Look forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.